Okay, so this problem is telling us that a survey of 1,000 adults. When I see that, I immediately denote n by 1,000 or 1,000 by n. So this is definitely the sample size, of course. Found that 50% of the respondents favored a plan. Okay, so you will see that this is denoted by lowercase p, and this is proportion, all percentage, and this will be basically denoted by p hat, coming from the sample, You don't have to do this right now. I'm just giving you the heads up what follows next. From the sample. What will be the parameter for the population? This is the parameter. Still proportion or percentage, but this belongs to the population. For population. If this comes from the sample, how is this called? So if it comes from the population, it's called parameter. If it comes from the sample, p hat, is called
subset.
Statistic?
Yes. So let's go back. This is important to remember, right? I'm going to post this all for you. So the parameter is the numerical summary of the population. The statistic is the numerical summary coming from the sample. So in our problem, just to give it a heads up, the statistic is coming from the sample, is denoted by p hat. It has a hat, p hat. And we will use this to make inferences, to draw conclusions about the parameter for the population, which is p, still proportion percentage, which we do not have and we cannot determine. So the statistic is p hat. It's determined using a sample of 1,000. But our target is to say this is very close to that. So we can make an inference about the population percentage. Okay? So thank you for choosing this. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. So back to our problem. So N, it says a nationwide survey. It's not a census, so obviously 1,000 represents lowercase n, and 50% is the p hat, the proportion of the respondents, proportion in the sample of 1,000. In other words, 500 said blah and 500 said the opposite. Favor the plan to break up the 12 mega banks, which then controlled about 69% of the banking industry. Fine. Complete parts A and B below. Part A. Identify the population and sample for this study. Choose the correct answer below. Okay. The population is all adults in the country. The sample is the 1,000 adults surveyed. Let's read on. The population is the 1,000 adults surveyed. The sample is those adults who favored breaking up the megabanks. The population is all adults in the country who favored breaking up the megabanks. The sample is the 1,000 adults surveyed. The population is all adults in the country. The sample is those adults who favored breaking up the megabanks.
Would it be B?
So if I choose B, then this has to be the entire population, right? The population is the 1,000 adults surveyed. That's not the population. The population is the entire country. The 1,000 n, lowercase n, 1,000 adults, that's the sample. And from 1,000 adults, 50% of them said yes, 50% of them said no. So it cannot be B.
Would it be A?
It is A. So the reason I'm doing this with you in class is there are several reasons. Number one, I want to get you started on this. Number two, you will see there are a lot of nuances. This is not algebra 2 plus 2 is 4 and there is nothing else, right? You really have to pay attention to the nuances here. So the population is the entire country. We took a sample by surveying. We chose to survey, to send maybe or give them a call or send them a mail questionnaire to only 1,000. Out of those 1,000, assuming all of them answered, because sometimes we have people who don't answer, right? We got 500 answers yes, break them up, and 500 no, don't break them up. So the population cannot be 1,000. The population is all the adults in the country. Correct, but not who favored breaking up the megabanks. No, 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 no. The population is all the adults in the country. That part is correct. The sample is those adults who favored. No, no. The sample is not those adults who favored. The sample is 1,000. Out of 1,000, 50 said yes and 50 said no. So yes, the correct answer is A. Do we understand the analysis here?
Yes.
Any questions on this analysis before we look at part B?
I just have a small.
Yes, please.
Just to double check, the census, a census is the sample of the population, right?
Yes, of the entire population.
Yeah. So basically, the 1,000 adults would be a census.
If the population were 1,000.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, but since it's a survey, the population is not 1,000. Just the sample is 1,000.
Okay.
Very good question. Is everyone with me?
Yes.
Yes.
Part B. Is the percentage provided a descriptive statistic or an inferential statistic?
Would it be descriptive?
Absolutely, because it comes from the sample. We haven't made any inferences about P for the parameter. Absolutely. Who said that?
Is Gabe?
Gabe. Good. So indeed, it's a descriptive statistic because this number comes from the lowercase n, comes from 1,000 adults, which represent the entire population as a sample. Okay?
If it were coming from the entire population as a whole, would it be inferential?
Exactly. Well, in that case, we don't need to make any inferences. Very good question. So let me stop sharing for a second. Perfect question. If I manage to get to everybody, so let's say I would like to determine the average height of everyone in the US, 360 plus or minus million. Then I have to measure everyone. I go home, I add all those heights, I divide by the number of people in the country, and I give you the average. The average is 5.5. So that's no longer, a sample is not needed. X bar is not needed. A sample is not needed. I don't need to make any inference. I make inference when I don't have the information for the entire population. I have to collect a small sample and draw conclusions about everyone. So I'm hoping that my conclusions are correct. As long as my sample is representative of the population, my conclusions will be very close. They may not be 100%, but they will be very close. So there is no need for inference. If I can get to everybody, in my little example with smoking and lung cancer, I don't need to make any inferences. If I can collect everyone in a room and study them, and I don't need to make any inferences. I make inferences because I start with this and I want to make a conclusion about this. So I start with a small sample and I want to make a conclusion about the entire population. Then I have to employ the process of inferential statistic. But if I get to everybody, I get the answer without any headache. But I can't get to everybody because it's time consuming and because it's costly. I can't afford to get to 360 million people just to measure everybody and then go home and calculate. By the time I get there, it's probably not even valid anymore because, you know, people have died, children grew, and right? So, very good question. Thank you. Let's go back. Okay, so is the percentage provided descriptive? Obviously, it's a descriptive statistic. It comes from the 1,000 adults. That's it, not from the entire population. So now, so we can disregard A and C. The percentage is an inferential statistic. It's not. Okay, part B. The percentage is a descriptive statistic. Since it summarizes information about how much of the population, no. It doesn't summarize anything about the population. Okay. Part D. The percentage is a descriptive statistic. Since it summarizes information about how much of the sample of the 1,000 adults favors breaking up the megabanks. Do we all agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. I know I talk too much. So is this enough? Can we continue then? Or do you have anything else in mind before we move on to explanatory? We talked about explanatory variables, but now I would like to continue with observational study and designed experiments. See if you want to choose anything else.
Question 8.
Which one? 8 you said?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Suppose every student in a class is surveyed. So if the class is my population, then this is a census. If I'm only studying that group, and I don't care about anybody else on the planet, that will be my population. So let's see what they want. Suppose every student in a class is surveyed, and it is found that 75% of the class plans to take another math class. It is reported that 75% of all students at the school plan to take another math class. Is this an example of descriptive or inferential? And what it is?
Inferential.
So this is an example of the inferential because we looked at one class and we drew a conclusion about the entire school. And when it is reported that 75% of all students at the school plan to take another math class, is the value of 75% a parameter or a statistic?
Parameter.
So it becomes a parameter because we could not get to all the students in that school, and we drew a conclusion from surveying an entire class. Now, I do have questions about this, and the question is that class representative of all of the entire school? I don't know. Is the 75% result valid? I don't know. I have to ask them how they chose this class. Why did they choose this particular class? So there are a lot of questions here. So I'm not sure that this is a valid study, but let's go with it. Okay, is it descriptive or inferential? Descriptive statistic because the sample data at the school is being organized and summarized. The value 75 is a statistic because it describes the sample. No. The 75%, so descriptive statistic, the value of 75% is a statistic because it describes the population. Inferential statistics because the results of the class sample are extended to make a generalization about the population of all students at the school. The value of 75% is a parameter because it describes the population. I would agree with this. I would not agree with the study completely because I have questions. Inferential statistics, the value of 75 is a statistic because it describes the sample. So the process of what they are describing here, assuming it's correctly done, it is an inferential statistics, as you said, right? It's an inferential statistic because the results of the class sample are extended to make a generalization about the population of all students at the school. The value of 75% is a parameter because it describes the population. True, but I do not like the idea without getting all the information. I want to know how they picked this class. I want to know why they picked this class. I want to know if this particular class is representative of the entire school. I do not agree with all their steps. You understand what I'm saying, right?
Yes.
Because I don't know. How did they pick this class and why? Very good pick. Thank you. Okay. You think we can move on so we can start the next section with, and we have a few minutes to work on some problems there?
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay.